and welcome back to the Behind the Fake podcast. I'm Fate, and our guest today is dyventus, aka Gabby. Would you like to introduce yourself, Gabby? I mean, I just did, but tell us about yourself. Why don't you?
I am an artist. I am a writer. It took me a while to admit it, but I think maybe I am better at writing, I guess, than art. I love both,
You're
though.
good at both, though. And I will say that dyventus/Gabby is the person that designed our logo for the Behind the Fake podcast, and that's really special because it looks really good. So,
Thanks.
yay her. And she does a lot of really cool stuff, and I'll link those down below. I usually talk about linking things at the end of the podcast, but here we are at the beginning because I need to stress how good of an artist she is. And then she's also a good writer. Like, she's on the podcast as a writer at the same time. Like, she not only designed the logo, but then here she is with her incredible work.
I'm blushing so hard right now.
You better. With her
Oh my
work,
gosh.
I Am Cold. It's called I Am Cold. I'm not actually cold. It is very warm here in California. The work is
Yeah, I
cold. I
bet.
am cold.
It's freezing where I am right now, so.
Oh, there you go. My computer was about to go to the screensaver. I'm not done with you yet. I guess if you want to go into the reading, go ahead. If you want to give a little bit of info, it's up to you.
Yeah, so I wouldn't really say there's any trigger warnings for this. It's pretty short, but I guess I can say that when questions come. I'll save that for afterwards.
Okay.
Okay, all right. Oh wait, that is the wrong window. Give me a moment.
Okay.
All right. It is raining. Has been for a while now, and it is enough. I'm done waiting. In intentional tandem, I can feel my body and mind turn in my chilling, sweaty sheets. Sleep has not been kind to me. The pale eye of the moon is ice, and a century before I've only ever known it to be blood. It was for that age I have known hatred's numbing gaze. But passion and conviction have departed now. That golden light so hoped and yearned for has left me bereft. Now that it is no longer in need. And so, I am cold. I have grown used to it in these days of rebirth. Hiteno has thus far been my frigid catalyst. But I would never have as much minded if I had not known peace. No, not peace. Something else. What I now endure is not frantic or active. It is silent and screaming. Yet it is not something I can hear. It is thin and heavy and pulling. It is the icy dread of cold sweat and the weight of window panes that creak in night's black. I wouldn't have minded if I didn't know the burning, the one that never leaves. It is present and incessant, but it is only so because of its origin's absence. He thinks it a kindness. How more wrong could he be? In most waking moments since my first, it was agony to know I've been deprived of that unique comfort because I need time to process the shadows. They never relented in all my years of isolation. I was only ever able to bide the time with shells of the people I love. Still love. I'm done waiting. My feet land on the cool wooden boards below his bed. He gave me his bed. It is cold. I stand and am reminded of my mortality. My vision tunnels with darkness, and I think back to the first time I stood as less than a goddess once again. I did not yet know how to understand physical pain. Whether or not I was able to wouldn't have made a difference. He was there, in front of me, for the first time since I had gazed into his dimming eyes. since I had held him as he died in my arms, since I had sobbed inconsolably into his muddy, clammy corpse at the injustice of it all, and the ice finally cemented itself into my bones. Such a thing did not come from the calamity. Such a thing is owned by grief. But then came the moment when we were both fallible beings, facing each other after an eon apart. "Do you really remember me?" I'd asked. "In life, in death," he promised, "but not all the same." It was enough. Before I could even process what movement was for such a state of living, I found myself in a unified effort to reciprocate his embrace. I buried my face into his neck and wept at his blazing warmth before I knew I could. I wept at the sweet flow in the vein beneath my cheek. He was not a corpse. I needed to know that. I clung to him and clung to him, but I should have held on tighter. For after a time he stiffened, pulled away, and gently led me from a moment, scarce enough never to have returned. I step off the stairs. Then I'm at his side, watching over his figure bathed in moonlight. I, too, wish to so comfortably cascade over him like this, to be the solemn light basking in his heat. I want so badly to know it for myself. "I know you're awake," I divulge in the quiet. It is true. Sleep is not kind, unequally to the heroes and the guilty alike. "And you are too," he replies, searing blues oriented on me acquisitively. I seat myself on the floor next to the head of his cot. His eyes are trained on me without the cloud of slumber, only the lucidity and fire that he can possess. Link, I sigh. I am cold. My arms reach out to him, my hand scorched the moment it caresses the skin of his face. "And you are so very warm." I softly brush his veins away from the orbs of lightning in his skull. His hand wraps delicately around my own, and he bores into my very core with those beautiful azure spheres. He is searching. "I am giving." "Then I will hold you," he answers. Upon climbing into his envelopment, I discover that never in my first life did I feel such tenderness and warmth than in that singular occasion. And never did I sleep so soundly.
It's very good. I don't know,
Ta-da!
like, it was, like, very, like, wistful, I like it.
Yeah, it's very similar to the emotion I was feeling when I read that, I guess, because I guess I was feeling like well, okay, I was feeling a lot of things when I wrote that, but I guess, like, lonely was one of them,
Mhm.
and that's definitely what Zelda was feeling in that moment, was really, really lonely, because she'd been like that for 100 years, and
Right.
then when she finally has somebody she thinks is going to fill some part of that, he chooses to distance himself from her. At least, I'm not I mean, there's a lot of different ways that it's been interpreted what happens afterwards. I definitely think there's, like, this relieving moment of reunion, but I just think it would take some time before they'd really be able to be comfortable around each other. But
Right.
that's all that she'd be wanting is just to be with him, because she remembers. She remembers everything.
Exactly. Um, yeah. Sorry, I lost my brain. I need to stop thinking about the thing I'm not gonna talk about. I was listening to you. Um, so I have 3 questions for you. I usually come up with 3 questions, but since we don't have a co-host today, it's just going to be 3 questions, and then the 4th question will be the Tumblr question. I'm sorry that you don't get as many questions, but hopefully these will lead to good conversations. I don't even know if these are good questions. I read your work and wrote these questions while I was at work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm a sub, so I just sit there and do nothing. But as long as they don't murder each other, it's fine.
Yeah, you're like, as long as I can like handle these feral, unruly teenagers, it's all good.
So, your writing style is so uniquely poetic. Like, I don't think I've ever read something like your writing style before. I don't know. It's like I've read my share of poetic writing styles, but there's something about yours where it's not bogged down by the poetry. Like, I think a lot of like verbose writing styles are just like, okay, Shakespeare. I don't understand what just happened. But yours, it's like it's poetic, but it just flows so well, and it isn't bogged down by your vocabulary, because vocabulary can work against you. So like
Definitely.
it really moves with the reader's wavelength. So what do you think inspires this unique way that you write, and where do you think it comes from?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question, and I think I know what you're talking about. I'm a very acutely detail oriented person. Like I'm capable of like physically reading fast, but when I actually sit down and I read a book, I go through it slowly and I go through it like one time and I remember a lot. That's kind of how my brain works instead of like it's because I like as I'm going through something, I'm very thoroughly analyzing things. I'm methodical in the way that I process things. And so it's kind of like a similar thing when I'm writing. It's it's kind of it's not entirely linear, right? Because you have to go back and edit and all that, but it's pretty linear even if it doesn't pick up at the beginning. It's like I have this idea for this emotion I'm trying to convey. And because I mean, I will say, like, I'm somebody who's grown up going to therapy and stuff, so I'm very tuned into describing emotions and being able to express them through words. And so I take that and I just combine it with I guess like my focus on detail, and I guess that contributes a lot to it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, I also just like the reason why I write is because I'm emotionally dumping and I'm processing something. And
Yeah.
so I just there's a lot of my writing just is kind of I guess like it can be like silly maybe or like kind of like funny or cute, but then a good portion of it is mostly just melancholy, but like
Mhm.
a sense of yearning.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's yearning's a, I think a very good word for it.
Yeah. I agree that um uh works of writing that come from a place inside yourself and from your own emotional struggles are the ones that can hit the hardest in readers. Um so I'm glad that you've been able to channel that, but then also you're not alone, and you have a support system for these
Yeah,
emotions. But also, yes, I think no human has gone through life without having struggles, and writers especially really channel those. Um,
it's pretty interesting.
healthfully.
Yeah,
Channel them healthfully.
yeah. I've like, it's kind of interesting, the topic of, like, people like, everybody going through something hard has been coming
Mhm.
up a lot in my life lately, and
Oh, wow.
I've been able to just, like, look around at, like, friends and people I know and just, like, be able to, like, sympathize, empathize, just
Mhm.
be more in tune with them and, like, have a deeper sense of care for them just because 'cause I'm like,
Right.
nobody gets through this unscathed even though most of everybody pretends that things are fine all the time, and,
Right.
sometimes it really is, and then there's just, like, suppressing everything.
Right. Most people are ignoring what's wrong, and then also I think that's interesting point you brought up because I think that writers especially are more attuned because we write through different perspectives and different characters, we're more in tuned to be able to see things from a different perspective.
Oh, I
Um,
would totally agree. It makes it easier
yeah.
to listen to other people too.
Yeah, I mean, because I think a big problem with this world is that people are so tuned into their own beliefs and there's nothing else. They just have this tunnel vision and they don't listen to anyone else and they hate anyone who disagrees with them or looks like they might disagree with them and it's just their way is the way.
Yeah,
And I think
and it's
that
sad. It's
writers
really sad.
writer's perspective is actually really valuable even if you're not a writer and you're listening to this because um, living your life in someone else's shoes, like writers do, is something that teaches you something different, which is what I try to do with my works. I try to force people to say, okay, this is this moral, this character did this with it, and they confront that with themselves.
Yeah.
So I went on a tangent.
No, like, well, I mean, I think it's like a cool tangent. Cause there's this whole idea of like, wait, no, I forgot it. Darn.
You got this whole idea of
um, what did you just say a moment
pers-
ago? Because
like looking through different perspectives.
yeah, um, darn it, I haven't been sleeping enough lately. I'm so sorry.
You need to get more sleep.
Yeah,
Goes to
that's
everyone
very
who's
true.
listening to this podcast. Get more sleep. You deserve it. Self care. Take a shower. Drink water. Now. Do it. I'm gonna hunt you down if you didn't. And eat. Um, sleep. I already said that, but yes, self care. Anyway, keep going. That was the self care plug of the podcast.
Which, very important. I just think it's interesting that with like writing, you're looking at different people's perspectives, and it's there's this whole theme of unity that's been coming up in my life lately. Like, the basis of stories is disunity, it's conflict. There's the whole reason why anyone cares about anything anyone writes, unless it's like academic or something, is because there's a problem. That's what we talk about. We talk about problems.
Well, yeah,
And
every story anyone's gonna write has to be centered around conflict.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then, but the really interesting thing I think about like good writing is creating unity in disunity. Is
Hmm.
is you as a writer have to practice that, and then you have to show that. So
Right.
you have to take yourself out of whatever mindset you're in and look at things differently, because then you have the whole picture and it's not just you, and then it's more, your story's then more unified.
Right. Yes. Completely.
Sorry, I just these are
No, that makes sense. Like because the world is so chaotic and because our stories get so intricate, it's important to um find the cohesion within that. I get that.
yeah, like bringing
Yeah.
things full circle, like
Yeah.
just very purposeful writing.
Yeah.
That's something that I like, makes me so happy. It makes me like fangirl.
It makes me fangirl over your writing.
Thanks.
Whenever you write, even in the fic we're talking about in the notes, you're like, "Yeah, I was nervous about posting this." I'm like, you're one of the best writers in this whole community. What are you talking about?
What?
Oh,
Okay. Ooh, man, my face is like really red right now.
alright.
Woo.
I that's my purpose.
Okay.
Okay.
I
Where
mean,
did
I really enjoy it. It's like really important to me. I never thought that I was like I go through a lot of phases and my brother teases me about it all the time. But this is one that's been around for a bit. Like there's way too much emotional attachment in it for me at this point for me to just like drop it.
Yeah, I get it. But at the same time, you're amazing. Okay, I'm gonna move
Yeah.
on. Are we ready to move on?
Yeah.
It's okay. Oh, this question. This question is not gonna make any sense. We're gonna put that out there. Cause like I find when I read these fics for this podcast, like I'll like write down half a sentence of like an observation, but it won't really be a question. I'll be like, okay, I gotta turn this into a question, but then it turns into a different question, and then my first statement's there. So it's like I'm trying to take notes, but then I remember I'm not in school, so it's like I've accidentally analyzed this too much. How do I make this a question? Okay.
Yeah.
Um, Zelda in this fic is appropriately touch starved. Because she's been in the calamity glob. And so she's yearning. Yearning is a good word. The yearning, which makes sense considering the past 117 years. Um, Even though her father all at once did his best and could have done better, um, do you feel like Zelda hadn't been touched lovingly since her mother died? And although her father loved her, how cold do you think that relationship was before the memories? Because like with the her being touch starved, it made me think of, okay, yes, 100 years with a comedy, but even before that, I bet her father wasn't good at expressing. Obviously, he wasn't good at expressing his love for her paternally. Um, so I guess I'm asking what you think personally that relationship was like. Um,
Before we even saw what it
Before we even
was.
saw them, like between what Zelda's mother's death caused and how that escalated into what we see. Because Zelda's um touch starvedness comes from two places, I think.
Yeah. I
I'm sorry,
I
that
mean,
I must be okay. Yep.
yeah, okay, that's a heavy question also just for me personally.
I know, I thought of that after I asked a question, I'm like, wait.
No,
Mm,
it's not like no, I not I totally like I'm okay. It's just that like it's something that is it has a lot behind it in the
mhm.
answer, so I'm like thinking about it.
Right, okay. Take your time. It's okay.
Yeah. Um I mean, like in my own life, yeah, and like at least a couple people who are listening to this to understand this, but like being like so like you want to just like have somebody like touch you, put their
Right.
hand on your shoulder or something like so bad it like almost physically is painful. and
Mhm.
like and like the moment somebody does, it's like your skin lights up and you feel so much better. It's like instant endorphins.
Right.
And um I just that's something that like because whenever I'll like get sad or something like that,
Mhm.
and it kind of puts me in that place, and that's kind of like definitely what I imagined Solo was going through, but like a lot more intense. Um,
Mhm.
and I do think that that has been a one thing. I think that she has gotten some of that like that physical love language from a
Right.
Urbosa after her mother, but it was so
Right.
infrequent that
Mhm.
but, like, here's the other thing. Even like, I have people in my life that, like, I can get, like, hugs from people and stuff,
Mhm.
and even when that happens, y you this it's like this, like, unending pit. Like,
Right.
you just want more, basically, and I kind of like, whenever it must have been amazing for Zelda to go and visit Urbosa and just be able to be close to somebody, especially when as a princess you have to be so
True.
it's distant from everybody, especially with like the added pressure of like this is like this holy being that's going to save us. It's like that might make people look at you as a little bit more like untouchable.
Right, exactly. Yeah,
um
I that that you talking about that, I was thinking, like, if she just lost her mother, then no touch is gonna replace that, like, she's always looking for like what you said, like, how it's unfulfillable, like, that loss must,
yeah.
create something in her, like, even that just hasn't been quite the same, and, like, I guess to go off what you're saying, like, personally for me, um, like, yes, there's people I have access to, but at the same time, it's like, there's only certain people where it really is special, if that makes sense, like,
Yeah.
yeah, okay, you keep going.
No, it's like
Yeah.
there's like certain people where it just ends up being like intensely significant and
Yes,
impactful. And Zelda knows that Link is one of those people. She just knows that.
yes,
And
exactly.
you know, with there I can't, say that there was whether or not there actually was any occasion upon which Rome was affectionate with Zelda. I imagine that it did at some points happen, and I think
Mhm,
that was meaningful to Zelda, but I also think that the whole fact of him, like, making the decision not to regularly be like that, because I don't imagine he
mhm, right,
would, put it farther down on the scale. It'd be tinged with something else. It's just kind of tainted because it's like,
right,
well, why don't you like what it is about me that makes you like this, like because what it ends up feeling like a lot of times is it's just like, oh, there's something defective about me, like something inherently like, oh, okay, all right, nobody
right,
wants to come in contact with me.
right, yes.
And like being distant from people is like so, so impactful on like so many layers.
Mhm,
But yeah, I do think that Rome didn't express that. And
right.
I just he's not a personality that would be prone to doing that. Even if he did care, he didn't.
Know how
It's
to
the
show it.
whole Yeah, it's the
Yeah.
whole thing with like love languages.
Mhm,
Zelda's love language, I can't say exactly what it is, but it's certainly different than Rome's. And
right,
physical affection is not that. Could not interpret that as the fact. But I do think words of affirmation could be, because in Age of Calamity, you see that when they reconcile,
right,
it's loving words that he gives her. And I think that really touched Zelda. Um, but Breath of the Wild, that's not what happened. It was harsh words. It was not affirmation.
he was so worried, like, that's the thing about Rome is that the thing to remember is that he had good intentions, like, he was so focused on saving the king keeping the kingdom safe, and by extension, his daughter safe, that he didn't really realize how much he was hurting her, and by putting all this pressure on her, like,
Mhm.
he was just so stuck in this, there's no other option, you have to unlock your powers, through prayer, and I think a lot of their father daughter connection got even more lost because, um, she as she resents her obligations, he becomes part of that, you know?
Oh, yeah. Like,
Yeah.
there's just this whole thing about, like, crushing expectations that you place on yourself become so much more painful when you know they also come from someone else.
Right, yeah.
And it's like, even if I know it's like, it's so hard to satisfy what I think of I should be doing. It doesn't matter if I ever would even be satisfied, because outwardly no one else will be either. At least, that's how it would look like from Zelda's perspective, because the person who put it into her mind that that's such an important, like, crucial thing, and it is, is the one person that isn't going to be saying that back. Oh, not the one person. I'm sure she received plenty of criticism.
Yeah. There's only a few select people who didn't criticize her.
Yeah.
And then even then, she expected Link to criticize her. Like, it was so rampant that she was like, this kid who isn't saying anything or emoting anything must hate me.
Yeah, because, like, honestly, she hadn't been accustomed to anything else to know that that's what she would receive. And in her experience, it's, if they aren't, like, Urbosa would be, outwardly expressive of her proudness. Link just wouldn't say anything. And then Roam would be outwardly expressive of his disappointment. And so you have that's, like, very painful. And she's already feeling bad that he's unlocked his destiny, and so that's her relationship at that point had already been related to pain. And so it was kind of like automatically like, oh, he must be disappointed, he must disapprove, because it's natural.
Yeah.
I love going into the psyche of characters, and
so do I. This is fun. Okay, sorry.
It's very, very fulfilling, actually. It makes me feel a lot less alone, which is, like, the whole point of why we write.
This is the point of why we write. This is the point of why I do the podcast. But then at the same time, I'm just like trying pulling stuff back. Like, okay, don't go too far. Don't overanalyze.
I overanalyze everything. It's part of my detail-oriented part.
Yeah. All my high school AP English training I'm gonna just tuck it under the bed. It doesn't mean that much. Okay.
The yellow curtains, am I right? Like, all the details, all the description, it has so much symbolism.
Well, because you're forcing me to read The Great Gatsby, which is, it's not a good book, let's be honest. And you're having me analyze every single thing that's colored, and it's like, okay. Can we move on to another book? Okay, anyway.
So many points I've been like, why are we reading this?
It's like half the books, maybe more than half the books that were part of the curriculum, where it's like, why? Why? Yeah. Are you trying to torture me? Some of them were good. Pride and Prejudice, Frankenstein, those are quality books. Great Gatsby, no. Everyone loved it, and I'm like, no. Okay.
Yeah, when I heard about the plot of it, I was like, what? That's it?
Okay, anyway.
Well, we'll love that.
Yeah. Okay, this is a fun one. And I'm curious to hear what you're going to say. What are some of your personal headcanons for the period of time between Breath of the Wild and Breath of the Wild 2?
Oh, okay. I have done some thought on that. Okay, like everybody has. Okay, all right. It's obvious, but I can't actually say how formulated I've really put it, but
mine changes every day, but
yeah, no, really, like it's not consistent. I'm not even going to pretend like it is. I can definitely say what I'd like want to happen. But
that's what I want to hear. What do you want to happen? There we
go. Okay. Well, for one, I would hope and I would imagine that the circumstances under which Zelda's hair ends up being cut is symbolic, and because the action in of itself is, when somebody cuts their hair, like it,
right? And then pay attention to, because
no
I'm worried that they're just gonna show the short hair and just, yeah, she's got short hair, but it's like,
I know what that means. Yeah, I want to know how. And I yes, I definitely want to see behind that. What el I mean, because this is something else I've thought about. Everybody, including me, writes about like Zelda and Link in Hateno afterwards. Um, but I just think because they're still teenagers and because of like, Nintendo's like a family-friendly brand, I
Mhm.
don't actually know, how possible it is that they would be in the same house together.
Right.
Um, I think that or maybe they will be, traveling companions and all that and stuff.
Mhm.
I just don't know what they're gonna do considering like ratings
Right,
and everything. It's like such a
right,
big franchise and there's like, people of all different ages playing it.
right. As much as I would love for certain things to happen, like, there is that, um that detail where,
It's like might
um
not be really in the brand.
right, it would be a big shift in, where they've had these characters in the past, but at the same time, they could be making those decisions about, um, just a little bit growing these characters up a bit and,
Yeah.
um, delving more into what Link wants outside of being obligated to being a knight, delving into, even if it's not on brand for them to really go into the romance, just delving into their relationship.
I
Um,
will say though, I'm inclined to believe that they are going to put more hinting at that because with Age of
right,
Calamity and like that one video they put out about
yeah,
Skyward Sword, um,
it's
I
there,
they are taking that direction and they see how much of an audience there is for it, and I just like since Breath of the Wild was released, the people who were like really invested in it are now actually getting a little bit older too. So,
right,
um,
and it is there, and it's been there. The elements of the ship have been there since the beginning of the franchise.
you
Um,
cannot convince me that the people who work on this are not like the biggest Zelink shippers.
no, it's there. It's just like there may be some obstacles,
Yeah,
because it's a big team working on it, and you never know. I personally like to think that it's taking so long because they're working on the kiss scene, but
you're like, you know.
like at the same time, I have to keep. We're talking about perspectives. I have to keep in mind that um, there are a lot of moving parts to a game like this, and it's a big franchise, and taking these two characters um, that direction. Although it seems like that's the trajectory they're going, they still might not do it. It just
Yeah,
depends on what they decide.
it's a pretty
I have to
permanent
keep that
thing
in mind.
too. It's
Mhm.
yeah, it's like because once they do that, in the past they've always had
Right,
the thing where it's like, oh, there's like these other intrigues or options or interests or people that
right,
Link's been involved in that context with, and it's like once they like really really do that like in a game, it's never gonna they can't like do that again, I guess. But yeah,
once it's been done in the game, uh, that it's
it'll
only
become
that game,
expected.
that incarnation that's been solidified. Oh, what was I gonna say? But I do think that Nintendo sees those that the connection. Okay, if they see the romantic connection at all, which they probably do, they see it as some sort of end, like as a finality, like an ending. Because in behind the scenes of Breath of the Wild, where they talk about uh Skyward Sword, Twilight Princess, they talk about them being lovers as like a later, like as like a later thing, but like as a not now during the game thing.
Yeah.
Um, so if anything, I feel like following that pattern, it would be an end of the game reveal. But I would love some more than that.
Yeah,
Um,
just
but
give me some more to work with here.
like of course, I would like more to work with, but like if I'm really looking at what Nintendo might do, they might not do it at all. They might do it at the end. It's definitely for sure 100%. What I do know is that it's a conversation they had because they've hinted
Oh
at it
yeah.
too much to not even just talk
Oh
about it
yeah.
internally. So they've
Like, it's there
definitely
for a
talked
reason.
about
It
it.
is there. It is there.
Yeah,
And
it is there.
I think that that because of its presence and the increased focus that has
Mhm.
been put on it, like within the past like 2 years.
It was just within the past like few months with Skyward Sword's release. Like half of
Yeah.
that was talking about their love story, and every time I'm just like,
Uh
yeah,
yeah. And I just
I saw what you did 10 years ago, and here you are again.
yeah.
Sorry.
Well, it's the thing with like they are going to separate them and
Mhm.
because of like the connection that Link and Zelda have at this point, they kind of have to in order to drag it
Right,
out.
because at the end of Breath of the Wild, I feel like there was this. It was. I mean, it was kind of in creating a champion, but there was this unspoken like they're free of their obligations. Like, and I think in creating Champion, it was like, okay, even though Link isn't really her knight attendant anymore, he said that he'd stay with her and protect her. And it's like, okay, Zelda's free to be her own person. Link is free to make his own decisions. Um, there's got to be a driving force here, and like, I'm not saying that every relationship must be romantic in order for people to care for each other and like die for each other. But at the
Mhm.
same time,
That is the
come on,
implication
come on,
of it.
it's gotta, come on,
Yeah, well, no,
come on.
it like literally is like there is a history of romance.
It's there. It's come
Yeah.
on. Okay. I don't know. I'm speaking as if I'm talking Nintendo. I'm just like, come on. You know what we yeah.
Okay, but like everybody speaks like they're talking to Nintendo in their mind when they're just venting about how they want the Link to be like
Yeah.
very real.
Every single Zelink tag on Tumblr when they're like people talking in the tags. It's just like a private letter to Nintendo, but not very private.
Yeah.
Exactly. This is some good answers. This is gonna end up being one of my favorite episodes. Like, no offense to any prior episodes, but I don't know, just like this like one-on-one like
Yeah.
deep dive between two people who like to deep dive. I don't know.
I'm very, very much into that. And I like can't do it around a lot of people. They're like, okay, okay, calm down. And I'm like, oh.
Oh my god!
I,
So I because let's see, Nintendo released a bunch of Skyward Sword like merch, and I bought the mug, like the fancy mug with the gold trim.
oh yeah, I know
And
what you're talking about.
yeah,
I'm like, if I wasn't broke and saving my money for Breath of the Wild 2, then I would have bought something.
so I bought it for drinking coffee, but like I'm still kind of like cautious about drinking out of it. So what I do is I bring it to work and I put Reese's Pieces, no, not Reese's Pieces, like Reese's cups in it for
Ah.
students so that they'll like me.
Mhm.
By the way, some of them say I'm their favorite sub.
Which, like, okay, if you were my sub, you'd be my favorite sub.
Okay. But yeah, so I put those in there, and one of them was like nice mug, like it's kind of like a passing thing. And you don't know how much I held back the urge to be like, "You want to know about Skyward Sword? You want to know what there's a link in that? Oh my
You want to
god!
hear me spit, like,
You
Zelda
want to talk
facts at
about
you?
this?"
I can go on for, like, hours if you want.
But then I was just like, "Thanks," and then like try to like contain myself, like, "Don't talk about the link. Don't talk
Like,
about. Don't
be
talk about.
normal, be
Don't talk
normal.
about." Okay.
Yeah, I've definitely experienced that. Whenever somebody like slightly mentions Zelda, whenever it's like just like day to day, I'm like instantly have to like be silent and rein myself in.
Exactly. Okay. We're gonna move on to the next question. Even though this is a solid discussion. Like that, I'm glad that this is recorded. This is gonna be solid content. Okay. Um. Okay. So this one goes to the both of us, and you get to go first because you're the guest, and I get to put you on the spot because I'm in charge.
Nice.
What did their planning process look like? Did they plan out as much of the fic as possible, or did they go with the flow?
Okay, so usually I cannot believe that I'm about to say this, but, you know, considering the impression I've probably given at people at this point, it won't matter that much. So I have, like, this really embarrassing little notebook where when I get really upset or I'm going through something, I sit down and I just end up writing poetry. I don't even plan it. I sit down and I write, like, this really depressing crap because I'm like that. Um,
Not the strangest thing that I've heard about you. I've heard way strange things about you in the kitchen. That is
oh, yeah.
completely normal. Go on. I do the same thing. Not in the kitchen.
Yeah, I haven't made macaroni and cheese in a while, I'll say that.
No, no, stay out of the kitchen and keep going with
I'm sorry.
we don't need we don't need my audience to know
About
about
my
the
culinary
knowledge.
crimes. Sorry. I wouldn't want to give anyone any ideas. Anyway, not that anybody very sane would follow in my footsteps, but I honestly forgot the question. I'm so sorry.
Oh, sorry. Well, what did their planning process look like? Did they plan out as much of the big as possible, or did they go with the flow? And you were talking about how sometimes when you're going through something or you're upset, you just have your journal and you just write poetry without even planning it.
Yeah. So, yeah, so, like, that's, like, one thing that ends up happening, or, instead of, like, poetry, sometimes it'll be, like, I have a feeling or, like, a line of dialogue and just this emotion that, like, I'm feeling I can see going on between two characters. Well, okay, I only write about Zelink at this point, let's be honest. And so, I'd actually something had happened, like, with my brother. I'd end up getting, like, my feelings really hurt or something like that, and you know, with how much I value creation and just, like, the works I do, it was something about that, so I was like,
Mhm.
I just kind of sat down and it was I was, like, really depressed for, like, that whole week because I'm kind of a sensitive person, I guess, and, it wasn't planned, but it was just, like, there was that paragraph in my story about it's silent, but it's screaming, and it's like
Mhm.
window panes that creak in night's black, and that was kind of like something I ended up feeling
Right.
because
So you let
yeah,
it flow naturally from what you were feeling.
yeah, and as a creator, I think a lot of times, um, it's easy to like wonder about like why it is you do what you do, and that's the reason why I get like really right. I'm like, why am I even doing this? Like, does anybody even care? I mean, like, this means so much to me, but
Mhm.
I mean, nobody necessarily is like just analyze this as much as I have and sees like all the layers I
Right.
end up putting into it. And I'm like, does anyone really care that much? And then like I'll end up posting it and like feel like really angsty about it. And then like I'll get a comment that is like so nice and I end up like crying and I'm like, oh, alright, I remember now, that's why I do it. Alright.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
also it's just like sending a message.
Yeah. Makes sense. Um, for me, my answer to that question is that it kind of depends. I don't really know why, but this is how it worked out. When I do when I have a longer work, when I have a work that I know is gonna be multiple chapters, um, then what I do is I definitely outline where things go, so I can make the work as a whole consistent. But when I write one shot that just kind of works like you do, where I just kind of let it go. Like there was one I wrote just recently where it started off as like one image in my head or one idea, and then I just kind of let myself go somewhere, and it got really dark.
Mhm.
And then it would end up really interesting. So I think for one shots, I guess there's less of a pressure of like, let's keep this consistent, and more of like, okay, there's more playroom. What are we
Oh, I
doing with this
definitely
one scene?
understand that.
Um,
Like, longer longer works for me, like, you can't, like, consistently do that every time because, like, they're definitely different between the 2, but like, the times I'll end up working on something is, like, I have to get myself into a sad 5 minute place like that.
exactly. So yeah, that's my answer. Is that it changes depending on what I'm actually writing, and sometimes a one shot turns into um a bigger work. So some sort of random chaos actually turns into order. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
Um,
I think your one shots are pretty great. You literally one of your one shots inspired me to, like, try my hand at, like, really committing to a first, like, long story.
oh, I'm
Yeah,
not
I mean
I'm not gonna cry.
no, seriously, like, oh my gosh, and whenever I read your poetry, I'm like, "Oh my god, I'm fangirling."
Okay, I'm fine. I just it's just been one I've been called the favorite sub, and then you said that in the same day. It's just like, oh, okay.
Okay, but in my honest and very humble opinion, I'm completely right. And whoever said that, like, you're the favorite sub, they, very accurate assessment, I have to say. Also, I have to return the favor for earlier. It's just that special flavor of vengeance.
I refuse. Okay. Um, I'll stop making gremlin noises. Okay. Okay. We're gonna wrap up a little bit, but my last question to you is, what are you working on currently? Like, what can you say about what you're working on currently, and is there anything you want to promote? If you
Okay, all right. Well, yes, I have a lot of whips. I am and I kind of like go from thing to thing, but I
Mhm.
think something that's kind of been at the top of my mind when I'm like, oh, I kind of want to write is my that lawn fake I was talking about that you inspired me to start. Like, yeah, no, like it just gave me this like I love the idea of roles being reversed and then but it's
Oh wait, are you talking about this one with the AU?
yes, yeah,
Yeah,
it's strange.
okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, you did it so much better. Keep going.
Yeah. Silence, don't say that.
See, it's
um,
been recorded. Keep going.
no. um, well, so it's my AU estranged and it was like I think it was something like the estrangement or something. Originally, that was the title, and then it just didn't work out when I was trying to make the cover for it, and I was like, eh. And it's basically it. It's like a role reversal AU, but not really, in the sense that they still have to fulfill the same destinies.
Mhm.
They're just born in different places,
Right.
and it's just interesting to see like the kind of aspects of what people perceive to be their personalities throughout different reincarnations, like attributes that they hold, like how that's affected how they still have that and how it's also changed when if Link is a prince
Right.
and if Zelda is ends up being like just a peasant and she lives on her own.
Mhm.
um like Link, very silent, lots of pressure on him. But, as a prince, he doesn't get the option to be silent.
Right.
He's he's taught and chosen to be the one to be articulate.
Mm-hmm.
And so it doesn't matter if it's out of his comfort zone, he normalized to it. And also, I just think it's interesting to put Link into a place where he holds more sophistication than he's typically thought to. And then also his, like, you know, somewhat natural reservation, but his, like, love for fun and stuff, because that's definitely part of him, I see.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's a really cool thing that I love, but also something that I love writing modern AUs, actually. One that I'm working on, I almost had it done, and then something happened, and it dealt with the topic a lot of what happened, and it made me realize that I'm gonna have to change something about it, because now it's like way more emotionally charged. Like, yeah, that's fine. It's titled Curbside Pickup. It's kind of heavy, and it's a one shot, and so it's like kind of difficult to navigate that topic and still not drag it out. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, yeah, those are the kind of the two things that I'm like, man, I really need to finish that, and then I never.
You'll get to it. You'll do it. I believe in you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so weird to think that, like, this is the end after, like, everything, because I've been anticipating this for months, and I was, like, so excited
Oh,
to make the logo for it and everything. And I'm like, oh, wow.
I hope it didn't. I hope it didn't destroy your high expectations. I don't know.
No, like, this was
Okay.
amazing. I love this. Because I loved getting to, like, talk about the deep thoughts that I put into everything, because, like, that's one of the reasons why I love writing. So,
well, we're here at the end, and this you may be on next season. Who knows? It's not gonna be Zelda stuff. I don't know what it's gonna be, but if you write something for it, you can be on it. That's the criteria I have. It'll be another fandom. I don't know which one yet, but maybe
that's a pretty good motivation to write something for it.
Next season, and of course I'll post all the links in the description, so your information and the fic we talked about today, and then the estranged fic that we were talking about just now, and your Tumblr, so people can keep track of what you're drawing and what you're writing, because you're both very good at both. Yeah, you're good at both. Me hesitate because earlier you said I don't know if I think I'm actually I think I'm a better writer than I am a drawer, and I'm like, I didn't hesitate because I disagree. I'm hesitant because, like, you're so good at both that it's like, oh
gosh.
I don't know. Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we're going to wrap it up. Is there anything else you'd like to say to our viewers?
I appreciate, like, any comment that I get, and so even just, like, random rambling. So, like, I'm just saying that, like, if you guys ever don't know what to say when you read something, that's perfectly fine. You could literally just put, like, a period in the comment section and enter, and I sob. I don't know.
We love key smashing.
Yes.
Okay. So, until I return next week with Brady Matey and her fic The Surface, which we're finally getting to. I'm excited.
Yeah, I'm excited to hear that part.
Yeah. So until then, we're gonna say goodbye.
Alright, yeah, this was wonderful. Thank you. Bye.